Okay, we're going to try a slightly different angle here for this one. And I'm going to show you now how to mix the plaster and put it into your face cast. One thing to note, I am masked just now. I hope that that doesn't muffle my sound too much. But you need to be masked when you're working with the plaster because it's an airborne particulate. Even in non-COVID times, we mask when we're working with the plaster, okay? So just to remind you, we had our face cast right here. It's all ready. See how nice and shiny it is because we put all kinds of Vaseline on it, okay? So we did that, and I'm going to set it up here. The other thing that you need for this here in the floor is a big tub of the plaster of Paris. It says plaster of Paris on the top. The other tub has hydrocal in it. That's not what you want. You want the plaster of Paris, okay? I have also filled up this 1 quart container with water. I use warm water when I mix plaster because I think it speeds the process up a little bit, and I'm working with small amounts, and so I want a speedier process. I'm going to put this quart into this bigger bucket so that I have mixing room, okay? I am also going to take off my watch because I'm going to be getting my hands into this, okay? And my ring will be okay because it doesn't have a setting in it. If you have a ring that has a setting in it, I would recommend that you take that off. Anything that you find valuable, I would remove. I'm going to put my watch in the pocket of my apron so that it'll be safe and won't get covered in plaster. Okay, so this is kind of a slow process, but I'm going to demo the whole thing. What you want to do is you want to, down in the plaster, there is a cup or a half cup measure, okay? You're going to basically take that and you're going to shake plaster into the water a half cup at a time, okay? You're doing just a little sifting. Okay. We always add dry to wet. If you do it the other way, it ends up really clumpy and not pretty, and often doesn't work. Because the way that plaster works, it's actually a chemical reaction, and that reaction doesn't start until you start stirring it. And as you can imagine, if you're adding wet to dry, you have to stir kind of immediately to see how much you have. If you add dry to wet, you don't have to stir immediately because, as you're going to see here, we're going to start getting a little mound. In the middle. You'll get little islands floating on the top. Not quite yet. Still sinking. Well, that's looking a little more promising. It's still sinking. It's getting a good little island floating in the middle there. I hope that you can see this. The lighting is different because we're got the light in a different position. Okay, if you can see, we've got a pretty good island floating in the middle of that. I hope that you can see that on the film. Okay, so now I'm going to start mixing it. I'm going to use just one hand. Now, when you all are down here working together, you can mix a big batch of plaster as a group, and that's perfectly fine. It's not cheating. In fact, it's a good way to do things. But if you happen to be on your own doing this, you want to use one hand for mixing and keep your other hand free so that if I need to shake some more in, I'm not getting water into my tub of plaster. You don't want to do that, okay? So I'm going to start working it with this hand, and now the chemical reaction will begin, okay? You can sort of feel the lumps in there, and you're going to want to work those lumps out. This is actually a pretty good consistency, I think. You don't want, see these lumps that I've got there? You don't want to have those lumps in there, but you also don't want to stir it so that you get a lot of air bubbles in it. See how it's getting some air on the surface there? You don't want to, whenever you stir, like when you're baking, you're actually mixing air into the mixture, and you don't want to do that because if one of those air bubbles gets down next to the face part, it's going to be a place that isn't going to have plaster, and you don't want that. You want to keep the air bubbles out as much as you can. That's the reason for using your hand for this. But this is a pretty good consistency. What I tell you in the written work is you want it to be about the consistency of a thick pancake batter, okay? And that's about what we got going on here. It's about a thick pancake batter. As you know, pancake batter still pours. Yeah. But see, it's got a little bit of body to it. I don't know if you can see that on the top. It keeps a little bit of shape. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move this down now. I'm going to try, without making too much of a mess, to move my face cast over here where you can see it. Okay. Actually, let's trade places with this. Okay. And then we'll pour it there because I think you can see better there. Okay. So you want to pour it in kind of slowly so that, again, your goal is not to get bubbles in it. Okay, so try to get the surface coated, and sometimes you can take your hand and go in there and move it along the surface and let the bubbles come out of it. Okay. Yeah, you don't want to get too much splash. I have on my reading glasses. If you do not wear glasses, I would suggest that you would put on your put on a pair of safety goggles, which are up in our safety cabinet. That'll keep it from splashing into your eye. We have an eye wash station, should that happen. But hopefully it won't happen. Remove that. Yep, I've got a lot extra here. I could have done about half a face again. Don't worry about the plaster getting onto the sand. That's okay if that happens. Okay, now you're going to feel the plaster starting to get warm on your hand, and that's when you're going to want to be finishing up, okay? And so I'm done. If I had been pouring with a buddy, I have an amount here that they could have used. They can't, this cannot be saved, of course, and so I'm going to take it and I'm going to dump it in the garbage can. And then I'm going to wipe this out with a paper towel. I am also going to wipe my hands off with a paper towel. We have all of these rolls of brown paper towels. So before you deal with the bucket, I would suggest getting as much off your hands as you can. And the rest of this will wash and it'll be fine. Okay. So I'm going to get it down to about that much. Now I'm going to go dump this in the garbage, and I'm going to wipe this out, and then let the rest of it dry in the bucket, and then wipe it out when it's dry. Okay? And then we'll come back in a while and take a look at this once it's dry. All right?